how do you communicate with clients?
The way I try to communicate is in a way that inspires confidence, because a lot of times these brands or these individuals are coming to us because they believe we understand or know something that they don't, right? They're looking for our expert opinion. And so I really try to portray and project confidence, because what people will pay for is the guarantee or the security in feeling like this project is going to be a home run. People will pay Tyson Media twice as much or 5 times as much as they pay a solo videographer, because there is a guarantee that the experience, that the end product is going to be done well. And so if I can project that when I'm communicating with clients, that we have a proven process, we have our proven methods, and this is going to be a great experience for you, they are excited to be on set, they are excited to hand over their money, and ultimately the entire experience is better.
And the close rate goes up
Dramatic.
to 100%. If they know it's going to be good, it's like, why not?
Why not?
All right, welcome to A Filmmaker's Journey. This one I'm kind of nervous about. I'm actually really excited, but nervous. We've got Mitch Thayne. Mitch?
My friends call me Mitch, so you should be calling me
Mitch Thayne on A Filmmaker's Journey. How you doing, man?
Dude, good. Glad to be here, man.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm really excited about this one. Just
Yeah.
because I feel like we've kind of got a similar routes that we've taken as far as being business owners.
Agreed. And if you're talking about being intimidated, dude, this studio is unreal. You know, you come on my podcast, which I'll have you on sometime. It's a very close, intimate thing.
Yeah.
But here, this is very grandiose and nice. So,
Well, I'm trying to impress people like you.
mission accomplished.
Because I've got filmmakers, creative people that come into the studio. Obviously, you guys are in this world. I want people to come and not just be on a podcast, but kind of have an experience of like a cool set. And this is unique, obviously. And so really excited to have you here and hear about your journey.
Oh, thanks, man. Well, absolutely love your guys' work. So
Thanks.
Stoked to be here.
Appreciate it. I was kind of talking to you about this when I started, before we actually started rolling, but just like being in a studio with someone that's creative, someone that, you know, has been in a business, has been in a studio, lighting a million sets. This is intimidating for me, Mitch.
Well, hey, like I said, doing well, man. And it's fun because everybody does it differently.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's fun about creativity. And obviously what we're here to talk about is it's subjective and everyone's approach is different. But, you know, I admire what you've been doing, even though maybe I do it differently. So it's fun.
Yeah. And that's some things I want to get into as far as like how different people are and having your own unique voice. And we'll get into that as we kind of talk about your journey. But what I like to start out with is I like to hear about where you're at currently in your career. Obviously you've come a long way since that spark. I'm sure that you first decided to become a filmmaker, a creative. Where are you at now in your career? And then we'll dial it all the way back to the beginning.
Awesome. So what I'm doing right now is I play the role of creative director, and I was the founder of our video production company called Filmlab. So we started about 3.5 years ago, and we mostly do, similar to you, we do commercial work for brands. And I absolutely love what I get to do every day, because I feel like my role of creative director is, one, I get to kind of brand who we are as a company, which is cool. So, you know, in the kind of materials, the videos and stuff that we put out representing our brand. Also, we're getting ready to launch apparel and merch,
Cool.
Doing events, things like that. So kind of how people view us, not only as just, you know, a company, but also as a community they want to be part of. I get to do a lot of that. And then on the other side of that creative direction is also working with our creative team over our product. And our product is obviously the videos that we make. So I get to really focus in on understanding what the client's looking for, trying to figure out how can we take this need that you have, solve it with video, and do it in a creative and compelling and exciting way. And I get to work with my awesome team on doing that. So I manage all the creatives on our team. So I'm part of obviously all the pre-production, the shooting on set, and then the editing and post-production process. I'm kind of over that whole thing. But I got a really great team. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Last year we did 1.4 million in revenue. So slowly growing, slowly getting there. But I think more than the revenue, it's just been this last year, started making work that I'm like truly proud of, and it's starting to, you know, get to a spot where I'm really stoked.
So you are the creative director, but you're also running the business. Is there Is there a side of it you like the most out of the two?
And this is where it's hard for me because I'm
Yeah.
constantly comparing myself to the full-time creatives. Like
Yeah.
I compare myself to other directors. I'm like, man, this guy's shooting for Audi in Shanghai,
Yeah.
and this guy's doing X, Y, and Z, right? And so then I start questioning, did I do this the right way?
Mhm.
Because I tried to do both. And then obviously I look at business owners, my friends, who are starting tech companies, who are raising millions of dollars, who are doing X, Y, and Z. And I realized that I cannot compare.
Yeah.
Because I took a very unique route. I didn't go get represented as a director with some agency or production company. I decided, just like you, to bet on myself and start my own.
Yeah.
And so there's times where, I felt kind of frustrated or lost. I'm like, am I just trying to do too much? But I'd say if I had to pick one, I think what I'm just naturally drawn towards is the creative.
Yeah.
But I also think being a business owner is creative. I like
That's
total,
cool.
I just like building things,
Yeah.
Bringing people together. And that has manifested in both the creative and the business.
Yeah. Dude, the whole comparison thing, man. I compare myself to you guys even, and like, and just anyone else, like full-time filmmaker like that. Like, obviously I came from the whole like Devon Supertramp, Park the Wall, but knew them, watched where they went. Dude, comparison is like one of the biggest things I struggle with, and just being like, there's always someone that's further ahead of you, right? There's always something that's done something different. It's like, oh man, but like, that's why I said starting out, I was like, man, the whole idea of comparing and just realizing that we're all so different and we have our own paths, and even if you get to that, wherever that person you're comparing to, there's going to be one more person that you're comparing to, and it's just never ending. And it's such a crazy thing. That's been a trend in all of these interviews, is everyone's doing it.
Oh yeah.
But we don't show it. Right? Social media, it's like, we're all living the great life. It's easy. There's no struggles, but dude, it's a struggle.
It is.
As I'm sure you know.
And they say comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah.
Right? If I looked at your studio, I'm over here, I've got a little 12 by 12 psych. If I look at your psych, or I look at this incredible LED wall or the things that you've built, I'm like, I can get very dissatisfied with what I have very quickly.
Yeah.
But I think also what I have is unique to me, and and the joy of having obtained that and built that. That's what I need to focus on, is that journey, and not look at the destination when you're at, because you've been working at this for a dang long time.
Yeah.
And the way you've come about it has been different than me, but I've been able to gain some cool experiences, learn along the way. So yeah, I think just spending time focusing on other people and being dissatisfied with your own life really is just going to be holding you back from actually getting to where you ultimately want to be anyway.
Yeah. 100%, man. That's great. That's amazing advice. So as far as like where you're at currently, and you say that you kind of like the creative and the business, is Film Lab all you're doing right now, or do you have other things that you're working on as far like maybe outside of creative, or like,
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
So Film Lab for years has dominated my life, to the point where my Instagram was basically just another reposting thing for Film Lab, my daily, all that stuff. And it got to the point where my health really took a nosedive.
Yeah.
The stress that I was experiencing at work, the high cortisol levels and all that stuff, was really just building up so much to the point where it started manifesting in terrible health. So I started gaining weight. I started feeling lethargic and sick all the time, foggy brain. And so last year I started exercising more. I started running. I started just trying to move my body. And in the process of that and experiencing those things, I started realizing, like, I actually really love running. I actually really love the fitness culture and running culture. And so last year I was like, you know what? I'm the kind of guy where if I want to truly immerse myself in something, and I don't know if it's just a broken part of me, I should probably build a business around it, or I should probably get involved that way. And so I decided to start a running brand with some of my friends. And we haven't launched yet, so this is still, we got apparel. We're working on finalizing website and stuff, but it's called Dead Last, because as far as a race, that's where I'd be right now if I'm running.
Fun name, though.
It's fun, a little play on words, and trying to make it a little bit more accessible to people who don't feel as comfortable running, maybe feel a little intimidated, and be like, hey, this is a place for everyone, wherever you start. And kind of the idea is, even if you're starting dead last, that's not where you'll finish.
Yeah.
We're all about progress and stuff. So I think that's been fun for me to, and obviously Film Lab's still my 95% of my focus, but to just have something a little bit different where I can take some of the things that I've been learning with building Film Lab, with creating content for other people, and kind of channel that into trying to build something else. It's been
Very
fun.
cool. Yeah, the reason I ask is I think it's so important to have more than just what we're doing in our work, which we love. I assume you love to create and you love to run your business. Like I find joy in it, and but it can also drive you crazy. And so
Agreed.
having things outside of creating is so important. And so it sounds like running has been kind of a hobby. And does running and doing that stuff outside of your business and being a creative help with just like the what we were talking about with comparison, and just like removing yourself, not bringing work home, right? Like having this hobby outside of your career, does that help with your mental state, I guess is probably the best way to put it?
Completely.
Cool.
So, quick story on Monday.
Yeah.
Monday morning, I ended up having a tough day, man, because I got a call from one of our clients. We'd been planning on this project for 3 months. It was to go out to Georgia, tell some really cool stories, and they ended up pulling out for one reason or another.
Yeah.
And that's $50,000 that goes out the window.
Yeah.
30 minutes later, I get another call from an agency on a concept and a deck that I'd built out spent hours and hours building out. And they ended up going with a different director in a different company. There's another $160,000 that we now lost out on. So I'm like, okay, $200,000 worth of work that we didn't get because whether it was my concept wasn't creative enough, or I didn't articulate it well enough, or they just liked somebody else more, that I lost out on. And so I was feeling just down in the dumps. I was feeling like, man, there's more I should have done, all these things, right? And kind of carried that with me throughout the day. But as I went home, it was a late night, but I went home and I decided, I'm going to go out for a run, because I'm the kind of guy, my mind is going a million miles an hour. As a business owner, you're trying to juggle a lot.
Yep.
And so I decided to go on a run, and I'm not fit enough to be able to just let my mind wander. Like I have to be very present for that. And so I ran about 5 miles, and it just forced me to be kind of in this meditative present state where I'm focused on my breath. I'm focused on being where I'm at. And it was kind of like the same concept they talk about when you make your bed. It's like, hey, if you make your bed and the rest of your day fails and you don't accomplish anything else, at least you could still say, at least I made my bed. I did do something right.
Start with the win.
And it was kind of like that for me at the end of the day, where I was like, you know what, even though I took some L's today, I had some failures, I had to learn some lessons from this, I still went on a run, I bettered myself, and it shifted things back into perspective. And I woke up on Tuesday ready to get after it and go back to war.
Yeah.
And so, I think running has helped me a lot in that way.
It's so cool. It's so fun to peel back a little, the curtain a little bit, even deeper than just like, what you're doing inside your business. But it's like now we're talking about like just dealing with losing out on a lot of money, which I've been there, where you've put your heart into something thinking you're going to get it, and it just pulls back and you're like, what did I do wrong?
Right.
Ultimately it is, nothing that you did wrong. It's just different flavors, and
it's the game we play, man.
Dude, it's so hard.
Yeah.
It's so tough, especially that's a lot of money to actually miss out on. But then I always look at what's next. There's going to be other opportunities that are going to come and play, and you'll look back and be like, oh, well, that's a good thing I didn't do those, because this came about anyway.
I totally agree. And it lit a fire. It's lighting a fire in my belly where I'm like, okay, it's time to do more spec work. It's time to start going after the kinds of projects I really want anyway.
Yeah.
So
very cool. All right. So let's go all the way back to the beginning. This is going to be fun. I have no idea. And because I know a little bit about your business, I know we've met, but I have no idea where you got started. I think that's the most exciting part about the journey, is like what began this creative outlet / business for you. I guess, where did it begin?
Thank you. So really, obviously, like most people, I would grab the VHS camera from my parents. Me and my brothers would hit each other with lightsabers and film it.
Dude, that's a trend, man. I feel like a lot of our generation did.
We all did that, man. So that was a part of it. But I really never considered myself creative growing up. I never thought I was that guy. I played sports. I did all these different things. And I was preparing to serve a mission for my church, but I'd been delayed for a bit. And my parents bought a Nikon D3200, the Costco special, brought it home with a kit lens. And I was just bored one day, and I just picked it up and I started I literally read the manual. I've never read the manual on building IKEA furniture. I've never done any of that. But for some reason, I was just curious about how this camera worked. So I read the manual. I figured out what aperture did and ISO and shutter speed.
And how old were you?
I was 19.
Okay.
At the
I was
time.
imagining you as this like 9-year-old.
Oh, no, yeah, I should have said. So all high school, all this stuff, I wasn't the creative guy.
Yeah.
And while I was ready to go on my mission, that's kind of when this happened.
Cool.
So, yeah, I picked up this camera. I started messing around with it, and I started falling in love with this art form. And Instagram, this was in 2013, was kind of starting to come into its heyday. It started really growing. And at that point, everybody was posting pictures of their dog or food. There was nothing curated or aesthetic about it. And so I just started throwing up these pictures, a photo of a leaf on the ground, a photo of my friend laughing, whatever. And it started getting a bunch of traction because it was just higher quality, a little more curated. And so I started gaining a lot of followers. I started growing. And I was like, oh, this is cool. Well, I went on my mission, came back, and didn't really think that I'd be able to build anything out of what I'd done.
Yeah.
But I got home from my mission, and this gal said, hey, my sister needs somebody to take photos at her wedding reception. She'll pay you $200. And I was just,
wait, what?
Right? And I'm sure this is a common theme, right?
Yeah,
Where
it
somebody's
is,
like,
especially in Utah. It's like everyone you haven't done anything, and it's like, hey, do some weddings. It's like, oh, I can make some money.
It's good money, and what's cool about weddings is you're having to learn how to give a little bit of direction to people, but also work with the light that you have, capture the moment as it's happening. You have to think on your feet quick. And so I started taking photos, and I got paid for it. And it kind of just slowly started building from there, and people started being like, oh yeah, Mitch, he's the photographer.
Yeah.
And it probably wasn't till, I was a year or two in that I started looking at myself like, oh, I'm creative. Because I never considered myself that way. I never really pegged myself that way. And then that started becoming a huge part of my identity. And
so it was kind of natural for you when you picked up the camera.
Yeah, I think there's very few things that I obsess over. I'm very much hey, it's 85% of the way there. Good enough. Let's go. But for some reason with making something beautiful, I just really was drawn to it.
Very cool.
So yeah, eventually I started looking at videos and these travel guy videos, probably Devin Supertramp stuff I'd seen with you guys. Loved Casey Neistat, this guy named Sam Colder who was doing travel films. And I was like, man, I want to make videos. And so that's where I kind of started messing around with that. And that was kind of really the beginning of everything for me as I started creating videos, started putting them out on the internet, getting a positive response. A few people said, hey, dude, your highlights are completely blown out and this is not good. Or that transition's way overdone. But, I overall had a lot of positive comments and feedback, and it really just kind of fueled that fire.
So going back to, I guess, before your mission, when you had Instagram and you were just posting pictures, those are like the early days of Instagram, the heyday when there wasn't a lot of virality. What was happening with your Instagram, and like what kind of feedback were you getting on these pictures as you were, taking them, and just you were ignorant in what you were doing. You weren't really sure what it was going to turn into.
Yeah.
So like what was happening while you were growing your Instagram? What was making things go viral, or not viral, but getting attention?
Yeah. So it was interesting. There's a lot of like feature accounts that started popping up where they'd start featuring people's work. And I was like, again, very early. So one of my friends on there was India Earl. She's like an incredible photographer. There's a gal named Zoe Lazarson, a bunch of other people who were very kind of early on and creating here in Utah. And we started like doing meetups, and
cool.
It started being like, okay, me by myself taking a photo of this river, that's cool, but let's start going places. Let's start going to downtown Salt Lake City. Let's start kind of trying to actually direct and set up these photos to make them a little bit more interesting. I had a friend who did surrealism photography, so it's a photo of him opening up a dryer and there's clothes flying everywhere, hitting him in the face and stuff. And that's his photo. And I was like, man. So we started kind of just experimenting with that. Yeah. And as we started being a little bit more creative, being a little more intentional with what we were making, that really started resonating with people. And I started getting featured on different feature accounts and things like that. And before I left, I had 10,000 followers, which back then was huge. Absurd. We couldn't even DM people. So if we wanted to meet up with friends, I'd go comment on my friend's photo, one of their old photos, and say, hey, what's up? Here's my number. Shoot me a text, you know, and then we delete those comments later. But
so then you got back from your mission. I'm just kind of retracking,
totally
going in a little more detail. You got back from your mission and you started seeing these travel videos, like you said, Supertramp, Sam Colder, Casey Neistat, which are huge inspirations for even myself. And Sam Colder started popping off when I was at Supertramp. And I was like, we got to change our style, you guys. Like, his editing is insane.
I mean, I saw you, I think, doing gainers off of cliffs. I've seen some videos of that, so you know.
That's my my outlet, I guess. I got to get the adrenaline going every now and then because I'm just a dad now. So
hey, one dad to another, that's sick, and I'm too scared to jump off cliffs. So good, man.
Thank you. And that's essentially what got me my position at Supertramp. It's like, you got to be crazy, but you also got to be creative. So. But yeah, as far as watching that content from Supertramp, Casey Neistat, what was it about? What was it that you saw from them that kind of lit the flame? I guess, was that more when you transitioned to doing more video?
Yeah.
When you saw that?
Yeah, I think I saw that their camera was taking them places.
Yeah.
That it was getting them to do something outside of the norm, right? Because they had a camera in their hand, they were willing to go wake up 3 hours before sunrise, drive somewhere and hike up a mountain so they could capture the sunrise. Or maybe there was an experience where somebody wanted to travel a certain place or do a certain thing, and it was taking them places and it was forcing them to kind of live beyond the mundane. And that was really exciting and inspiring to me. And so as I saw that, I was like, that's what I want. I want to see new things. I want to meet new people. I want to experience things. And I love the idea of bringing back what I experienced and sharing it with other people. And so that kind of started forcing me to do the same thing.
That's the coolest part about film, in my opinion. And I've talked about this since I realized it, was the camera just, like you said, takes you to different places. And it's like a magic wand. It's like, it just lets down the barriers. Oh, he's a photographer. Oh, he's a videographer. Let him in. Yeah. It gets you access to things you would never have otherwise just because you're able to use a camera.
It's so true.
And it's so fun. And so that's really fun. So after like the whole, you know, seeing things on Supertramp, Sam Colder, Casey Neistat, what happened at that point?
Yeah. So I was freelance guy and barely making ends meet, you know, and we all know the feast or famine, starving artist type of a scenario. So I would, you know, 1 month I'd have a job that would pay me some money. And I should say that the things I was shooting was not glamorous. I did a funeral slideshow. I shot piano recitals.
Those.
Yeah.
That was tough.
It's tough, you know, it's like
you're making
obviously very emotional for these people, but I'm not connected to the person and you're trying to make it seem impactful and stuff, but you don't have the context. You know, I shot piano recitals. I shot basically anything that's boring that you could think of. I probably did. And then what I would do when I wasn't doing that is I would try to, on social media, you know, put out these exciting, cool things. But you know, I had no resources really, you know. But there kind of came a point, and this is where every good story happens. I met a girl, right? And I met my wife and fell in love with her. And all of a sudden it started putting things into perspective where I started having to take my life a little more seriously. Hey, being this single guy, you know, paying $400 a month or $500 a month for rent, you know, that's all fine and dandy. But if I want to start building a life, I want to start building something for the future, it's got to be more than just me running around solo guy with a camera. And so meeting her and things getting serious started making me ask the question of, I feel like I want to build something more. And so it was right before I met her, I ended up talking to a school counselor, and they were like,
"This is in college?"
This was in college. I was at BYU. Cool. And they kind of confronted me. They said, "Hey, look, you're not going to class. You know, you should probably take a year off." And they said you should take a year off and decide if you want to actually pursue this. And I was like, okay. And right before that, I was going into the advertising program at BYU, which is very well known. And I was talking to the guy, and he was like, hey, on this path, you're going to, you know, learn all these things, meet all these great people. I'm like, okay. And he's like, and then we're going to place you inside of an agency. And I was like, whoa. I don't want to get put inside of an agency. He's like, well, what are you doing here? I'm like, I want to gain all these experiences, make connections, and then go start my own thing. And he's like, that's not what we do here. We're all about placing you, like job placement, getting you an agency. And I was like, well, I don't want to do that. He's like, well, then this isn't for you. And from there, I stopped going to class, and then they told me to leave. So
Nice.
yeah, it was a funny experience, but leaving that behind, I realized more than ever, I think I just want to, part of like being creative and building things, it's not only about capturing a moment and sharing it. I think I actually love the idea of bringing people together, making something that's bigger than myself, and, you know, going that route. And so from there, I decided to start my first production company, which is called Avenue Film Co. And you and me started talking on social media when you were at Nomadic, I think, while towards the end of our days at Avenue.
Yeah. Well, let's rewind just a tiny bit. I'm so curious about this ambition that you have. When did that start? Did you always know you were going to grow a business? Did you know that you wanted to be a filmmaker? Did you know you wanted to be creative? When you met your now wife, like, were you having conversations with her about your dreams? Like, what were your dreams at that point? Even back to when you were looking at the Supertramp stuff, were you like, this is where I want to get to? Because it sounds like you had a plan.
Yeah, I think maybe I hadn't defined what the plan was, but I really can't take credit for this part of my life because I come from an incredible family.
Yeah.
So my dad has been an entrepreneur my whole life. He's done everything from starting a construction company to support his dad and brother to owning wilderness treatment programs. He's a marriage and family therapist, absolute stud.
Nice.
And so my whole life, I saw the risks that you'll take as an entrepreneur, but the great rewards that you can receive, and just the idea of running your own life, although it's way more stressful, and I saw that firsthand, there was something beautiful about that struggle. And there's something I really admired in that. And the way I saw my dad provide for not only our family, but, you know, dozens of others was really inspiring to me. And so I think my family doing things differently, you know, I was homeschooled. My mom had the last two siblings of ours at home. You know, there were a lot of ways where we did things differently. And I realized that following the status quo and the norm is never going to, in my feeling, was lead to the significant life that I wanted to have.
Yeah.
And so being an entrepreneur, doing things my own way, starting my own business always felt like what I naturally was going to gravitate towards because that's what I'd seen. And I knew that although it'd be hard, it was definitely possible. And so I think that was kind of always in the cards for me.
That's cool. So, so you grew up with this kind of this seed planted in you early before you even knew what it was, just because you saw your dad do it. And then at what point did you marry that with filmmaking?
Yeah, I mean, it took a while because, you know, I was questioning filmmaking for a long time. I took the StrengthsFinder test. Have you ever heard about that? So the concept is there's a lot of people, the story of Rudy, which I'm sure you're familiar with, right? He's this guy who had no real athletic natural ability, and his entire dream was to play football at Notre Dame. And he dedicated his life to making it work. And the final game of his senior year, for the final play of the game, he was put in and he sacked the quarterback of the opposing team, and, you know, they won the game. And it's this beautiful romanticized story. But StrengthsFinder, the book, they kind of open with that story and they say, now this guy who had no natural gifts or talents dedicated his life to accomplishing this great moment. And there's a lot of great things that happened because it was very inspiring. But imagine if he understood what his strengths were, and he dedicated that same amount of time and energy and focus into the things that he was naturally gravitated towards, that he's naturally good at. How much further could he have gone?
Yeah.
And I remember taking the test, the StrengthsFinder test, and I looked at all of my greatest strengths and attributes, and I was like, I don't think any of this really has to do with filmmaking and being creative as a solo guy, right? Maybe, you know, bringing together and communicating a vision as a director. But I started realizing that the only way I could truly use my strengths is making it bigger than myself. Because I'm not a super technical guy. I don't care about that stuff. I know how to light really well. I know how to run a camera, but there's people who obsess over that more than I do.
I'm the same way.
Yeah.
I don't get into tech. I was actually going to ask that because you read the manual back when. Was that interesting to you? When you read
mostly because I wanted the end goal of making something
understand
beautiful.
At least enough to make it look good, but I'm the same way, man. I am the least tech guy. I'm like, give me something that can make a video and then I'll light it, but like, I don't care about the specs.
Yeah, because I think there's a lot more to it, and I have a very holistic approach the way I do it, and again, 85-90% of the way there, I'm
Which
good.
is a
Let's move
really
on.
good business mind to have, because it's not always going to get to 100%. You got to let it go, move on to the next project, especially when you're hiring people and you're trying to get it as perfect as possible. You got to let go. The 80-20 rule.
That's right. You get it better than anybody.
That was a hard thing for me to overcome, because I'm the 100% guy. Get it perfect. But then it took like 3 or 4 years for me to let go of that. So
Yeah,
it's
because
cool
then
you
you realize
came.
nobody notices the
Nobody
difference.
cares.
And also, maybe I just decided that because I could never get it to 100. Maybe I just wasn't talented enough. So I just had to like learn to move on. But yeah, I was never extremely technical at all. But I just realized that my real gift is I can see a vision. I can see where we're at and what it's going to take to get to the end. And I'm really good at understanding and seeing other people for who they are and what they naturally gravitate towards. So I can say, you are exceptional at this. Come in here and do that. You are wonderful at this. And I love bringing together these different people and unifying all their talents to push toward a common goal. And so that's where I really started putting 2 and 2 together. I'm like, yes, I can do that on set. I think I'm good at that. But I like to do that even more intensively, and that's starting a business. And so that's kind of where I think the 2 and 2 came together, this love for filmmaking, and also the idea that I am able to get into boardrooms with my camera versus if I go the traditional business route, I'll be an intern fetching coffee.
Yeah.
But this camera is getting me into places, many people giving me value, and gives me something that people actually want to listen to me about.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of leaned into that and married both together.
That's so cool. So now that you obviously are good with, well, you've got these 2 things that are coming together, and you start Avenue Film Co. Go to the beginning of that. Like what at that point you're like, okay, now I've got film. I've got, I want to step out and do my own thing. Were you working any other jobs before that? Or was it just like, you're just doing these small gigs and now it's like, okay, now we're going to do a business? And then what was your vision with that business?
Yeah. So vision with the business is I knew I needed a partner. I needed immediately from the get-go, I needed somebody else to be part of that story with me. I wanted somebody else in the trench. So I met an awesome guy named Jackson Averett, extremely talented, still love that guy so much. So we started Avenue Film Co. And by started, I mean, it really meant we sat down together, because up till that point, I had just been freelancing, odd job here or there.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'd have a job, a project I'd be working on. Other times I'd just be watching YouTube videos, you know?
Yeah.
But we got together and we basically took our freelance projects and we sat down, and in a day we made a reel.
Nice. And
the next day I made a website, and it had been like an ex-girlfriend who had designed our little logo.
Cool.
Sweet gal. And we decided to launch. I mean, it was really like 2 days of prep, talked about it, and we're like, let's just combine forces. And we're like, all right, Mitch Thayne, Jackson Averett coming together to make Avenue Film Co. And we basically texted the link to our reel to all of our friends and said, can you post this on your stories and help us out? And, we launched. There wasn't a lot of forethought. We didn't know how to run a business. As we did that, we started realizing, oh, wait, what if we make money? We need to get a bank account. And it was kind of that. We led with the creative and the brand, and then we started
figure it out as you go.
Yeah, we need to
get started, which is the most important thing. As
Yeah.
sure as you've started many things, it's like, where do you start? I don't know. Just start.
Just get going. It's, how do you eat an elephant?
Yeah.
One bite at a time. Right.
So with that, what made you think I need a partner? Because I think that's unique for you to be like, I'm going to do a partner, like versus just being like, I can do this.
I think I just kind of seen how not far I'd been as just a solo freelancer, and I value collaboration. Like I love, like when you and me went to lunch, right? And we're talking about how we're building our businesses, what we're doing. I love cool. that.
I still think about that meeting a lot, and how much has changed since then, because I was offering opportunities that just went to the crap.
I mean, hey, things have changed for both of us. We need to talk after about the ways we get to work together.
I love that.
But, collaboration's always been really important to me. And I find a ton of fulfillment in bringing people along with me and sharing a journey with somebody else. And so I just knew, I'm like, okay, I haven't gotten that far as a solo guy. I believe if I collaborate with somebody, I combine both of our strengths. We're not only going to be able to get double the output. I think coming together, the multiplier is endless, maybe
Yeah.
3 times, 4 times, 10 times the output of what I could do by myself.
Yeah.
And I think that self-awareness really has helped me out. And so it was just kind of that I want to do it with somebody. And maybe it was also because I'm insecure and I wanted a security blanket with somebody else. Hey, I fail. You know, you're there with me in that corner. But
it's interesting. You have all these like things that it sounds like you just did and didn't think about. It's like these innate abilities to just imagine, like I think I'm going to do this, and then you do this, and it ended up being a pretty good decision. Was that a lot? Did that come a lot from like your family, like your dad? Did he give you advice? Like
all the time.
Because it just seems like things come so naturally based on all this.
No, I mean, there's other stories that I haven't touched on.
Yeah.
I tried starting a nonprofit with my friends. 6 months in, I got pushed out by this lady who was an investor, and I was left on with nothing. You know, there are many times I tried different things that really led to nothing. That was hard. So this was, I think, Avenue was the first time I jumped into something that really worked. So
you have had failures before.
I've had many failures. So I apologize for not addressing that. I was like, it's not really part of
That's why I asked the question, because it's like these things just happen. You're like making these great decisions. It's like, how do you have the ability to do that? Ultimately, it's because you've had failures.
I've had failures. I partnered with wrong people on the nonprofit. I didn't sign contracts. I really just trusted everything.
Yep.
And I also was strictly creative. I was never part of the business decisions. I was never making myself be valuable in that arena. And something I started, I got pushed out of, and I was very embarrassed and hurt by the whole situation. And it was a lesson. Yeah. And I think, me as a freelancer, I wouldn't call it a failure, but I mean, I didn't get anywhere.
Yeah.
And so I think it was, and I failed many other times playing sports, all these things throughout my life. I'd seen my dad struggle with different failures and the way he bounced back, the way he always stood back up. And, I said, worst case scenario, I fail, I go bankrupt, and I move home with my parents. Mm-hmm. I can live with that.
Yeah.
So why not just go all in?
Yeah. That's amazing. But then you start incorporating a wife and kids, and that changes everything.
It does.
Because it's like, actually, I kind of, as much as failure is good, it's like I gotta not fail, but at the same time, succeed in ways that can support my family.
I agree. And luckily, I failed a lot early on before I had the wife and kids.
That's so important. I tell people that all the time. Just get out and just do stuff. I mean, all of your guru says that, like, get out and just fail.
Mm-hmm.
But don't give up.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, if you don't, then you'll never fail, which is fun. But were you married at this point? Before Avenue Film Co?
No, I started Avenue Film Co. Me and Megan were dating. And then shortly thereafter, we got engaged and married. And Avenue Film Co. had been around for about 8 months, maybe 7 months when we got married. We got married. 2 weeks later, I left for 2.5 weeks to Africa. I got home, and then I had to tell my wife, I'm like, hey, welcome to entrepreneurship. Yeah. We're not able to pay ourselves this month. I'm sorry.
Welcome to marrying me.
Welcome to marrying me. I was gone for 2.5 weeks, and now I have no money to pay us.
Yeah.
And luckily, she has been such a backbone that has contributed to my tenacity and my willingness to kind of just endure hard things, because she's never made me feel guilty. She's never made me feel bad for having to put in the extra hours of the time or the effort, because she believes in the vision just as much as I do. And so obviously, I talk about having a great business partner, but even more important to that has been having a great life partner. And I know you have a great relationship with your wife, and it's the same thing. Obviously, she's had to endure the struggles and the failures and the lack of money or stresses that you're naturally going to bring home.
Of course.
But it's made all the difference for me, as I'm sure it has for you.
Yeah, 100%. I can't even speak enough on that, about how supportive my wife has been. And so it's cool to see how supportive your wife has been. Is she getting a little ahead, but real quick, has she been involved in your business? Does she actually work with you, or does she stay out of it and just like go do your thing, Mitch, and then bring home the bacon?
Yeah, it's for the most part, she stays out of it, but she, as much as I want to, I guess, bring her into it. So she's my confidant when I'm going through something. There's been situations where I have to have confrontational conversations, and she works through what we're going to do and say. And she very much looks at it as our business, but her contribution is, I'm your advisor. I am your supporter. I'm going to be home taking care of the kids so you can mostly guilt-free, stay dialed in and focused. And so that's the way she contributes to the business. And for the most part, then I just try to stay focused on doing the building.
Which ultimately helps you.
Totally.
Because if you didn't, Like that would be so, I think about, because I don't have my wife involved in the business like at all.
Yeah.
But that would be so hard because they're like our therapists when we have those tough days. And it's like, it's okay if we're, did you die? No. Okay. Then everything's fine.
And I have friends who, their wife or partner is calling them constantly, is making them feel bad for being a little bit late, is whatever. And I think, man, how hard is that? Because the greatest hack, for me getting better with my health, for me growing my business, for me just being a happy person, is to have such a wonderful, supportive wife and partner. So as you said, I can't speak enough about it.
Yeah.
Meg, love you. Shout out.
Shout out to the lab.
Yeah.
So then Avenue Film Co., you've launched it. You're with, is it Jackson Averett? Averett. I couldn't say that right.
Good.
So Jackson Averett, you guys are partnered. You've your demo reel's out. You've texted it to your friends. What happened at that point? Did you guys just get flooded with business and you couldn't even hold on?
No, it trickled in, man. I mean, we're getting little jobs, with the dentist office. Hey, we need to film a testimonial of some of our clients who had a great experience, our patients. We had a job and we thought this was changing the game for us, right?
Is this still a website that we can look up?
No, it's out. It's gone.
Okay.
Yeah, it kind of continued to evolve, and then I shut it down because I didn't want to pay the $20 a month or whatever.
Of course.
But I remember we had this project. I'm not even going to say the price yet. Where we drove to Montana, so 13 hours. We shot for 2 days straight. We drove all the way home, which was another day. And then we edited for the next week, both of us. We ended up delivering 30-something assets for a golf resort in Montana. It was beautiful. But it was video for every hole, horseback riding, campfires, fishing, all these different experiences you could have, real estate of the cabins. It was an obscene amount of work.
Yeah.
And we got paid $3,000 for it.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's expensive.
And we thought, and that's at first we thought, oh my gosh, $3,000 is crazy. And then you put in all the time and you're like, oh, that didn't go well.
Yeah, especially the expenses that you don't consider: gas, driving,
food,
lodging.
Yeah.
All the things that eat into your budget so quick, and then afterwards you're like, oh my gosh, we have nothing left.
We lost money. Wow. Yeah. And we put 2 weeks of our time into it. But there was a lot of experiences like that where we just had to hustle and grind and eke out this existence. It was so brick by brick, project by project. But the thing that we always emphasize is we just care about this client, and we care about this relationship, and we care about this being done right and done well. And I think that was seen. We put a lot of time and attention into learning how to light, into getting better sound quality, into fixing it in post when we needed to.
Oh, yeah.
And I think over the years, as we started stacking those wins, as we started, putting in those reps, all of a sudden our reel got more and more broad. The quality started getting raised. It was better and better. And as we started continuing in subsequent months and years, sharing new projects or things that we were working on, we started just kind of getting well known in our circles because we tried to treat everybody right.
And your guys' style was so good. I remember seeing stuff and just you've brought that into Film Lab too. Like, you guys have such a distinct, unique, cool style.
Thank you.
Cool is the best way I can describe it. Like, when anyone sees your videos, that is so cool. Like,
what a compliment.
The editing, the way you shoot, the style is just really cool. And did that, I know you've got your style with the partnership with Jackson. What was that marriage like in that business? Was it, you guys were doing the same kind of things? Was one more business, one more creative? What was that?
Yeah. So it started out very equally yoked. And then it kind of got to the point where we realized Jackson is such a nice guy that he should never sell us ever, because a client would be like, we'd be like, okay, $2,000 to shoot for today. And we'd sit there and get all stressed and they'd be quiet for 1 second. He's like, how about 1,200? And we're like,
talking stuff out of the deal.
And they're like, yeah. We're like, dang it, So we started talking. He's like, okay, I think you need to get on the calls because you'll at least wait a little bit longer,
Yeah.
And so naturally I started getting on more sales calls. I started doing our finances, which I don't know how I'm not in federal prison because I'm sure I did not know what I was doing financially. I was doing my best, but
Just figure it out later when the IRS hits you up. You're like, what's going on?
Luckily, they never did, probably because we weren't making any money,
Yeah,
so it didn't matter. But yeah, I started doing more and more of the business stuff, and he started trying to creatively innovate. So a lot of the style that I've developed, I really attribute to him, because I tried to focus on the business and he would focus on the creative. But we would go to every shoot together. We'd both edit all the time. He was just doing more experimenting while I was trying to develop that. And it was wonderful. It was a wonderful experience. And, you know, we built up our team and we were feeling like we're really cooking. That's around when we started talking, you and me. And but then, as we all know, you know, we lined up these big retainers, and I felt like I was really killing it. I'm like, hey, I've got four $100,000 retainers lined up, and all of them were slated to start in April of 2020. I'd been lining those up in February and March.
Yeah, April of 2020.
And we all know what happened at the end of March, you know. So
Sometimes.
COVID hitting, things changed, and that's kind of where the challenges of being a business owner during that time kind of manifested. So I had to call these people, because all the people who worked with us, we had 8 people total, including us. They were all our friends. And so we called each other one day and we said, okay, we can pay one more time, and then we have no money, and we can only pay if we don't pay ourselves. And so I guess we split it up. So, okay, you call him and her, and I'll call these 3 people. And that's where we're at. And so we called them and said, I'm so sorry. I feel like we've let you down. We can pay you in about a week and a half. And then after that, nothing. But you don't need to work. Just, I guess, go try to find something. I'm sorry. And that was the most painful spot.
I talked to Tyler Pearson in our pod. His is coming out next week.
I saw that.
Oh, that's right.
Clip.
I put out the clip about me firing him, and I totally forgot.
That is
but it was
hilarious.
because of 2020, and he ended up working for you, which is funny. But he, well, after he came back and worked for me, he's kind of jumped in and out with me. But those are tough calls, man, and that was a tough time too, because that was the first time I'd ever had to do it. I'm sure a lot of people are in the same boat in 2020.
So painful, but it's also transformative. And I think those difficult times lead to opportunity. And that's what happened for us. You know, we had to let go of a lot of our friends, but it was really just down to a couple of us. And, you know, we had just maybe another job coming in. So we'd take that and started working it out. And slowly, you know, we survived until one of our clients had totally blown up. They were an e-commerce tech company called Route. And obviously with everybody at home, everybody started shopping online way more, and their sales and their revenue just skyrocketed. And so with that, I got a call from the CEO. He's like, hey, I want you to do a project, come to California. And this is June or May of 2020. I'm like, am I even allowed to fly? You know, so we put on masks, you know, we get the COVID tests, and we go to California. And he basically pitches us, hey, I love what you guys do. I believe in you. I want you to come do that here, and we want to acquire your company. And one thing led to another, and eventually we closed down our doors, which was a lot easier because we'd already let go of all of our friends because of COVID, and we kind of closed up shop, and then we went in-house at Route.
Gotcha. That's how that happened. Okay. I was curious. That was my next question, is like, I first wanted to touch on I want you to give some advice on just partnerships in general, but then I was curious about how that transition to Route happened, because you're running your business. And I remember that because we were talking that one day. I was actually at Nomadic's office, and I think it was just a phone call, and we were talking about deals, and you were talking about the size of deals that you were doing at that time. But these $100,000 retainers that you had, were those over like a year?
Over the course of a year.
You're going to do like monthly breakouts.
Yeah. So it was going to be like $8.3 a month, which, you know, I think our biggest revenue month at that point, this will tell you how small we actually were, I think was like 45 or 50 grand. And we thought we just made it big, but we did that off of, you know, $3,000 day rates. So we were grinding.
And just scraping by with what I got. So talk to me about, I'd love to hear your advice on partnerships in general, and then relating that to the film world. I haven't partnered up with anyone in film, or just, I guess, the creative space. What's that like? And what kind of advice would you give someone that's stepping into that?
Yeah. So I think for my first partnership, Jackson was an incredible partner because he was very humble. I knew that he was looking out for me. And if he was focusing his attention on looking out for me, and I would focus my attention on looking out for him. So I never needed to watch my own back. And so he was somebody I trusted implicitly to always do the right thing and be honest. And that was really big for me. So number one, find somebody who's honest, find somebody that you can trust and has your best interest at heart. And he did with me. But that was kind of like level one in doing a partnership right, because I think him and I had too many similar strengths. There wasn't enough diversity in the type of skill sets that we had, type of experience we had. We both been freelance video guys who shot and edited, and that'd been really all we did. And so when it came to scaling a business and continuing to grow, that was hard because we both could do the same things. Yeah. And so naturally over time, we started experimenting more, and I started getting more into directing, and he started getting a little more into DP work and lighting and things like that. But I'd say advice-wise, the best thing you can do is, one, find a good human, but then two, find somebody who has different things to bring to the table than you do, who can balance out where your weaknesses are. And obviously, I'll get into it talking more about my current partner, Mike, but we're so similar personality-wise, values-wise, but we are so different in our areas of expertise and the things that we enjoy. So that would be some of my big things I'd call out.
That's perfect. That's all I want to talk about. That was like perfectly said. It's like find people with different skills but same values.
Yeah.
And then bring it together.
Beautifully summarized.
Yes. So you go to Route, and they acquired you. Mm-hmm. Had you ever sold anything up to that point? Did the CEO just be like, here's the deal, or did you put together the deal? Like, I'm so curious about that, because I had a similar offer when I was at Lumio. They're like, we want to buy Tyson Media. And I was like, cool. And they offered me money, and I was like, I don't know what or they asked me, what's the valuation? I've actually had that happen twice. I forgot. Brandless did the same thing. Oh, but cool. They put together the valuation. They kind of coached me through it. How did you actually go through with that and value your company and turn over from a freelancer to an employee?
Looking back, I would have done it very differently, because I was not driving the ship at all. It was very much the CEO at Route, Evan Walker. And I will say he was very fair and he was very generous, and took the time to kind of mentor and coach us through it. Yeah. Or he said, hey, I think we'll bring you over. We'll give you a very large, significant amount of stock. We'll give you a great salary. And Mitch, we want to make you the leader of the whole team and running that. And we'll give you like 20 grand for your gear. And I remember not feeling like it was enough and kind of sharing that with them. And I'm like, look, I understand that maybe we're not worth that, but emotionally, this is our baby. Yeah. Like, this is like a very emotional decision for me. And there's value to that, even if not for you, it is for me. And so he significantly upped the price on buying out our gear and things like that, and was very generous that way. But I mean, they had to walk us through it, and I was like, okay, what does, all these stocks mean? What does this number mean? Yeah, what could it, I don't get it. Ugh, man. And bless, no hard feelings, but of course, Utah Tech, bro. I mean, it's all in business. Yeah. There's so much stock and promised and things like that. But I thought it would have a lot more tangible value to me a lot earlier. I still have the stocks, and hasn't happened yet. But eventually,
they haven't been bought yet, but their valuation's amazing.
It was
last year.
It was billions of dollars.
Now,
now it's different story, but still rooting that it happens and goes well. Want the best for them. But yeah, so they made us a great offer. He kind of coached us through it, and now looking back, I would have asked for more. Both in salary and stock and also buyout. But, I didn't know. And I was still treated fairly. So went over, and that transition was very difficult, because I went from being a basically freelancer or business owner, running my own schedule, doing my own things, to being inside a very structured corporate environment that I had never been a part of. I was now part of a company of over 200 people. Yeah. I had my own, we were at our glass offices and all of our gear and stuff, but, we were expected to be on these meetings, and we had to use all their softwares, and they wanted us to organize things in a certain way. And, we just worked 7 days in a row. So we decided to take a day off, and we didn't tell the right people and, you know,
And the
wrist
politics.
slapped and politics and, okay, you got to make sure this person likes you. And, oh, you're not supposed to talk too much to this person because then they'll feel threatened. You know, there was a lot of elements that I'd never been accustomed to, being a small team of 8 people where me and my partner were running the whole thing. So it was a very difficult transition in time, but I think it was very essential for me to learn what business really looks like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dude, you're literally laying out what I went through just recently with Lumia.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I want to hear that story, by the way.
It's a long, very complicated. It's interesting too, just the way things worked out, but then ended up not working out. But that was a thing for me as far as like going into a corporation and how creatively draining that is when you're actually in a corporate environment and you're playing the politics and you're just, I don't know what it was like at Route, but at Lumio, it was like, we need everything yesterday and you're full time. So we need everything. Like there's barely any planning. Yes, you have some things, but most of it's like, we want it now. You're just pumping out stuff that's not even stuff you enjoy. Was it like that when you're at Route?
It was. And
you guys still had your style. I remember seeing the videos, but like, were you doing a lot of corporate stuff?
Actually, and this is where it was different. Route was, Evan loved the aesthetic. He loved making things cool. And so it was just like, the only time we get in trouble if it wasn't cool enough. We didn't push it far enough, which was awesome.
You to have that. That's cool.
Yeah, what was hard for us is we didn't understand what it was doing for the business, and a lot of times it wasn't serving the business or helping it grow in the ways we knew it needed to, and all that stuff. And it became very apparent very quickly we were there to just make cool things, not for our opinions, not for our real feedback or guidance on things like that. And that was hard to realize, like, oh, they just want us to kind of be button pushers, making cool things. And yes,
pushers, that's the word.
Let's push it a little bit further, but I mean, at the end of the day, they just want us to say yes, sir, and ship out edits like we're Amazon Prime. So that's kind of where it ended up going. But we did get to tell a lot of cool stories. We got to highlight a lot of fun products. We actually almost made nothing about Route. It was all about the partners of Route and those things. So got to experience and learn a lot there. But there was a lot of pressure where I remember we'd been there for a month and they said, okay, we need to do something crazy. Let's go to Cabo. The budget is 150 grand. We're going to rent out this crazy villa. We're going to bring all these models and talent and do all this stuff. And you guys need to film it and make it a success. And I'm like, what does success look like? And they're like, you know, cool stuff.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I'm having all this pressure and I didn't feel like it made any sense. And so there were a lot of instances like that where I just didn't understand how they were going to leverage it and do it. But, you know, there were dozens of teams and people behind them working on it. I just didn't know how it worked, but that was a little frustrating.
Yeah. And their models where it's just subscription based, right? They're just getting businesses to sign on and pay their subscription. So yeah, like how do you actually measure what if your videos are bringing in subscriptions?
Yeah.
Sounds like a lot of brand content.
A lot of brand content.
That's
so
where you can be creative.
Developed a lot of style there. And I think, again, the most important lesson, because I digress getting into the details too much, but the most important lesson was learning how a proper business is run and looking at what are the actual needs of a business, because now I'm on the inside of a big one. And now I'm seeing how video can solve a lot of problems. So if you can identify a problem that your client or potential customer is having, and you can figure out how a video can help solve that. Hey, we have a problem with sales, or we have a problem with returns, or customers don't understand the features or benefits here, or we need to raise money. So we need to articulate value here, here, and here, right? As we were able to start identifying problems and then learning how video can solve that problem through education, through selling, through whatever, that's where the real value started coming. And that's once I learned that, that's where I started itching to take that knowledge and go start my own thing again. Because I'm like, I feel like I'm equipped from these experiences being inside of a large organization to now know what they need and how to sell it and how to shoot it even.
That's so cool. Yeah. And because that's ultimately how we get businesses, if our videos make money for other companies. So, but then marrying it with still being creative and trying to push yourself creatively and not get burned out and just be a button pusher.
Man, dude, that's the dream. That's what we all want is it's fun when you make something that works.
Yeah.
Like I've made things that aren't that exciting visually or that crazy, but it works. It brings the brand money and value and excitement. I'm like, you know what? I just helped do something that's making somebody else's dream come true. I helped facilitate that. And that's a beautiful thing to know that you contributed to somebody's dreams.
Yeah. And then it just comes back to you because you're now getting a relationship that you're able to invest in people on your side of things. So that's what's cool for me is like when you do, it may not be the most exciting, but you're able to create a relationship that benefits not just you, but other people inside your business.
Amen.
And you're able to do that with, I guess, marrying the marketing with the creative.
Yeah.
So
it's a beautiful, beautiful experience.
that's cool. So then, how did it end? I guess what happened with Route?
Yeah. So again, Route was a great experience, but that itch never left me to be an entrepreneur, to build my own thing, to have my team, and to work with who I wanted to work with.
Yeah.
That was really important. So it was very difficult, but me, my buddy Jackson, who was also there, and then a gal named Caitlin, who'd come with us from Avenue over, all decided that we were going to leave. And I was running the department, and so that was obviously a hard conversation. I told our team first that we were going to do it. And they're like, we're going to leave too. I'm like, no, stay. I don't think we can provide that much work.
Yeah.
But then we went and we talked to our managers, talked to the CEO of the company, and they were really kind about it. You know, there were tears, they were sad. We were sad, obviously, but still felt that call. And even had very, very generous offers to stay, you know, well over doubling our salaries, increasing stocks, doing all these incredible things. That was so generous, but I still felt that itch and it just didn't sit right.
Yeah.
So I left, much to my wife's chagrin at the time, because she's like, all this money, think of the house we could buy, the security. But I still felt that call. Yeah. And so I left. And when we left, we had nothing. It was starting back at ground zero because we'd sold all of our equipment. We didn't own a computer mouse. I didn't own a laptop, nothing. And decided to do it again with my partner, Jackson. So we maxed out our credit cards, buying Canon C70s, buying laptops, things like that. And we had lined up one job with our friend John Lee, who's the creative director at Weave.
Yeah.
And Weave gave us a series of videos that we could shoot for him. And that's really all we banked on. So maxed our credit cards out, went out, and started on those jobs, and then built it brick by brick ever since.
That's intense to actually, leave with nothing. Did you try to take any of the gear with you when you were at Route?
No, because they'd bought it, and also I was just so worried about them thinking that we were being dishonest in any way.
Not like I meant like work out a deal.
Oh, work out a deal.
That like you gotta, if they're not going to use it, like, can you have some of these?
The hard part was we still left a team behind that was using the gear or all the gear that they'd acquired. So they still needed it.
Yeah.
So, and if I was a smarter businessman, I probably would have, but I was just ready to get out and try something new. So I was like, whatever it takes. Let's just
amazing.
Go.
Like you went all in.
All in, man. And it got to the point where, like I said, we maxed out our credit cards. All these things happen. And I remember there's a day where we had to book one more flight so we could go film the last video, because we were flying all over the country to film these testimonial videos. We had to book one more flight, and it was coming out of our own pocket. They paid a deposit up front. We'd maxed out our credit cards up till that point. And we had to book a flight, but we didn't have any money. And both of us were looking, both our cards are maxed out, our bank accounts are drained and empty. And I'm like, dude, I'm going to go pray. You go meditate or whatever you got to do. And we got to figure out if a freaking miracle can happen, because we got to book these flights. We have to leave in 2 days.
Yeah.
And the next morning, I said my prayer, dude.
Yeah.
And the next morning we woke up and my buddy Jackson called me. He's like, dude, I just got a credit limit increase unsolicited from Amex for $3,000. Let's go. So we bought our tickets, went, finished that, got this back end payment. And then from there, we were able to start paying things off and start building.
Way cool. So you went back into business with Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, he's not working at Film Lab.
He's not working at Film Lab anymore. So
talk to me about that.
Jackson and I started back at Film Lab. It was an awesome experience. Loved the guy. But I think we built it wrong this time, where we were 50-50 partners, even split. And we thought, okay, this time with Film Lab, we have to do it better than we ever did. At Avenue, we put together our reel and our website and our brand in a couple days. This time, everybody is going to expect more from us. So we got to be really top notch. We got to perfect our brand. We've got to make sure our reel is just absolutely dialed, all this stuff. And so we basically said coming soon, Film Lab coming soon, made an Instagram account. And then we didn't post for like 8 months. And because we weren't sharing our work, because we weren't posting, we weren't growing.
Yeah.
And so with that became a lot of stress. And eventually after 8 months, we started posting more. We started promoting what we were doing and work started coming in. But I think the stress had taken its toll. So Jackson really was feeling the weight of all that. Understandably, I was as well. But it got to the point where his mental health was really feeling it. So he was needing to take more and more time off. And kind of the once 50-50 split of the workload and effort started becoming more and more heavy on my side. And really got to the point where I just pulled him aside and I was like, hey man, I love you, and I know you love me. Like, let's talk about where are you at? Are you okay? And is this what you want to do?
Yeah.
And he was like, I'm so glad you said this because I don't want to do it anymore. I'm just here because I love you and we're doing this together, but I'm burnt out. Client work is hard.
Yeah.
Being kind of an agency is tough. Creative is so subjective. And so it's difficult and I'm burnt out. And it was it was like a hard conversation, but it was all a ton of love and a ton of respect for each other. And he didn't ask for almost anything when he left, took some gear, took some things, but, gave over the company really. And it's not like we had much back then. It was a year into our business at Film Lab, but walked away and we're still friends and still close. And, he's been able to do great things since then, but, obviously miss him a lot. But, I think it was time for both of us, for him to move on, experience new things, grow in new ways. And for me, to kind of finally take things into my hands. Cause up until that point, Jackson had been my security blanket.
Yeah.
Also, we're 50-50 partners. I could never really push forward the vision that I felt like I had for what we could do to grow, that we'd always need to buy in from both. But now I had full control and I was able to really run with it. And I ran with it myself for about 6 months until I brought on my next partner.
Okay. So so Jackson leaves and you go all in. Was that scary being by yourself? Like you said, he was your security blanket. What was that 6 months like? And I guess, did you flip the script? Did you totally bring in a new, did you just make it yours? Like, what was that transition?
Yeah, I think Jackson, bless his heart, no hate against him, but he was just a lot more conservative. And I'm always been a lot more of a risk taker, a lot more aggressive. And so I was like, all right, it's time. We're going to push out our reel. We never pushed out our reel in over a year, right? Because we wanted to be perfect. We're going to push out a reel.
And that's the 80-20.
That's right.
And maybe Jackson was like, I need it to be 100.
And because of that, our work was great,
Yes.
right? He would obsess over the details and make it beautiful.
Yeah.
But it also meant sometimes we never got things off the ground because I would also wait until he felt good about it.
Yeah.
But because now it was just on me, I was like, okay, I got to just execute all day. And luckily I had both my brothers were there working with me at the time. We had a couple of other people and they were very supportive of me emotionally because I was kind of a wreck after Jackson left. I felt I had all this overhead now, this whole load.
Yeah.
And we had very little money coming in. We were struggling at that point. And I was like, basically, if I don't make this work in the next couple of months, we're out of business. This was end of 2021, beginning of 2022.
Yeah.
There were a lot of tech layoffs going on. So a lot of the clients that we were working with were not putting out money with us. Sorry, this was actually 2022 to 2023. So tech layoffs, all this stuff, times were slow. But I was like, if I don't make this work, we're going out of business. And so I'm going to do everything that I've kind of felt like we should do. And this is kind of my Hail Mary. So we pushed out a new reel. We started a newsletter. We started a behind the scenes series on YouTube called Lab Takes, which is kind of just how we're building our business, how we're growing behind the scenes of us shooting, and started just really letting people know who we are. I started posting every single day on Instagram, posting multiple times a week on LinkedIn, and really just did the whole build in public thing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like this instant wave of work came in, but just enough to get through that month, just enough to make payroll. And it was very emotionally, a lot of turmoil, but slowly, brick by brick, over the course of, the end of 2022, beginning of 2023, we were able to kind of build up and gain a lot of traction. And as it started working out, and we started succeeding and we're on this new path and direction, that's kind of where I had business partner, now Mike, who had been helping us with a little bit of financial stuff on the side, because, dude, I shouldn't be doing our finances.
Yeah, it's tough.
He had a change of life situation, and we kind of talked about it and said, do you want to come all in on Film Lab? And so he, for a month and a half, he commuted from Idaho every week. So he'd drive down Sunday night, work Monday through Friday, he'd stay at his brother's house, and then he'd drive back home. And he has a wife and 4 kids. So Friday night, he'd drive back home, spend the weekend with them, and come back and do it. Ended up selling his house and then joining full time. And he is the partner that I'm so dang grateful for, because he balances me out.
I want to talk more about that, but I also want to talk about this whole like going all in and trying all these different things, which is like lab takes, your newsletter, posting every day on Instagram. Is there a method behind that when you started doing that? Where you're like, okay, I'm just going to, was it all about being organic? Were you trying paid content? Like what was your strategy when it came to building your business and attracting clients? Was it just kind of a throw things out, hope it works? Or did you have a method behind all that?
Yeah, I'm self-aware enough to know that there are people who are more talented out there than me. So if I'm trying to win based off of my reel versus yours, I might lose, because, also art is subjective. So people are going to like your work more than mine because of X, Y, and Z. So why try to compete with just straight art? Obviously we do great work, but people are going to love me for me and Film Lab for Film Lab. And so we need to tell our own story. And that's the only way we're going to be able to stand out and be different. Because I also think a lot of artists can become kind of snobs. And I've been there too.
Yeah.
Where it's like, no, I want to only push out this highly curated stuff. I don't even want to act like I care, that I'm that emotionally invested.
Yeah.
When really some of those guys, I've never seen them agonize more over their, one line caption because they want to sound artsy and nonchalant, but whatever.
Yeah.
And I said, I need to put that ego aside and just be who we are and let people know who we are. And I felt like that was the only way we truly have an advantage.
So it's about being organic and really showing your personality, which is, you're such a nice dude. And I'm not just
so
tooting
nice.
your horn, but like, you've always been so kind.
I appreciate that.
And so, okay, I see. I'm picking up on your method here. You had to get yourself out personally.
Yeah, get myself out personally and shine the spotlight back on our team too. Let people get to know the people behind it. Because if it comes down to it, there's like, okay, we're considering this company or this company. Well, we've watched multiple YouTube videos of these guys and their struggle to build their business and things they're learning, growing, how much fun they have on set. I want to work with those guys.
Yeah.
Even if these other guys are more talented than they are. And so that started working for us.
That's so cool, because it's building your reputation, it's building credibility behind what you're doing. And that's where I've found so much success in my business, is it just comes down to who you want to work with ultimately. Especially nowadays, there's so much talent. And it's hard to compete with the talent. But if you can, I love the method behind what you're doing. And that's to show the behind the scenes, show your personality, to be like, okay, yeah, that's great, but these guys are fun to work with and it's a good experience.
Yeah.
And it's just a jam when you're on set, which is always fun. And so you get the call back.
It's so true. And what's cool, and the other thing I've learned is, like, I'm sure there's been times where people have passed up on Film Lab to go work with Tyson Media, right?
And vice versa.
Maybe, but
I think there's crossed paths a few times.
There's been a couple times, but there's also so much work to go around.
Yeah.
And like you said, everybody has a preference on who they want to do. And so it's like, what's
Sounding
cool is I've never really like had this like negative thing about you guys at Tyson Media, because I'm like, man, they are better than me at X, Y, and Z, and Tyson's a freaking stud because of all these reasons. And so people are going to come. Yeah, it's true though. And I believe that. And so people are going to come to him for that. But then at the same time, I have some of my own unique advantages that has drawn people to me, and I've been able to work with them. And it's been awesome. And so like, I feel like leaning into who you are and what you're good at is the ultimate superpower. And I know people give that advice in dating, they give that advice in everything, but it applies to business and it applies to creative too. Lean into who you are and what makes you unique. Because if you don't stand out and you don't stand for anything, then nobody's gonna notice you. And I think that's important.
Dude, like that is so well put. That's one of my favorite things to teach is this everything that you just talked about wrapped up is building that credibility around yourself and adding your own unique spin to anything that you do and putting your experiences into your content. And that's ultimately where you're going to get, you're going to decipher, I guess, differentiate yourself as a creator. Cause I get a lot of young creators coming to me talking and they're just like, I'm just going to post my work. And it's like, everyone's posting their work. How do you take your personal experience? I mean, everyone's different, and add a spin to it. So like you said, there's lab takes. You're going to have your own personality inside of that. And I think the same thing applies with any other creator out there. It's like, okay, I've got my content I just made for this company. How can I curate some content to show off myself? And ultimately that's how you build your brand. But I don't want to say go viral, but I get asked all the time, like, how do you get clients organically, or even just through ads? It's like building credibility and building your reputation so that when you come to a client, they're like, okay, this guy's good, but this guy has done it before, or this gal has done it before. Like, you can tell they've had some viral hits or they've made money, and they're going to go that way. So anyway, that's just a long way to wrap up what you're saying about building credibility and having a method behind everything that you were just talking about, which is your newsletter, lab takes, behind the scenes, Instagram, social media. So anyone listening to this, it needs to do all that stuff on top of the paid stuff.
Yeah, you got to put it out there, because I tried the paid stuff for 3 months in that beginning of 2023, and I ended up spending $15,000, and I think we got $4,000 worth of work out of it. It didn't work for us. And probably it's the classic, you put more time in everybody else's ad than instead of yours. But it also just, it made me realize, I'm like, no, we need to just double down on what we're doing. And so it was posting our work, because there's a lot of people who say I share my work, but I'm like, bro, you're posting like twice a month.
Yeah.
Like, I was posting every day on multiple platforms where I'm like, hey, there's a business owner who, starts seeing my posts, and then he decides he has a video need. Who's he going to come to? He's probably going to come to the video guy who has shown up on his feed 15 times that month, because I can without a doubt say I was on people's mind more than any other video person in Utah, because I was sharing my work so much, and I was telling our story, and I was upfront with everybody. And that gave me such an incredible advantage at a time where we needed it so desperately.
Yeah. So that's fun, because you're posting so much. And that's another thing I get asked all the time is, how do you do that? And what advice would you give a filmmaker, a business owner in the creative space when they are asking, how do you have time to post? How do you have time to curate content that isn't for clients? Speak to that.
Yeah. I mean, how do I not have time for it? Because it's our lifeblood, right?
What if you don't feel like it though?
I never feel like it. I mean, I'm not narcissistic enough to actually enjoy recording my face and talking to the camera. I just like anybody else, I can be self-critical or insecure, but my business needed it, and I needed to do it. And I'd seen just enough evidence to point to the fact that it was what was going to save our business, that I needed to do it more. And so there were times where it meant I just had to stay an extra hour. There were times where it meant I had to, invest a little bit more into, recording something, or ask a teammate to help me do something. And you make the time if it's a priority. And for me, it was absolutely a priority, because if I didn't make this work, we were going out of business.
Yeah.
And so that meant I was filming cinematic, interesting content. I was using trending sounds, but then also some of the things that popped off the most were me with an iPhone saying, hey, I'm packing up gear to go on a shoot to shoot NBA All-Star Weekend next week. Holy cow, this is so cool. And I'm just walking through that. I'm like, hey, I'm going to pack these lenses, and that does really, really well. Or here's a little studio tour, and it's super simple. And so I think once I kind of removed my ego from it, everything needed to be perfect. Everything needed to be so art-driven and impressive. And I'm like, no, document versus create.
Yeah.
And as I started doing that, it helped a ton.
So cool. How do you get over the imposter syndrome of like, you made a post? I do this. I struggle with this every post. And I don't know if you do, but you created something and you got to push post. but all of a sudden you start thinking about what are people going to think? Who's going to judge me? You know, what if I did this wrong? Like, well, how do you get, because if you're posting every day, you have to get through that.
Yeah.
Do you deal with it?
I still deal with it because, you know, when the gun was to my head about my business working, then I was posting all the time. But once we got a little bit more comfortable, I let up off the gas. You know, I haven't been posting like that. You know, now it's maybe once a week. But every time I still struggle with it too, because I overthink it. But I just need to put it into perspective, and I need to go look at and say, I'm not posting for the guys who are 10 years ahead of me, who are better than me. I'm not posting to try to compete with Tyson. I'm posting for the kid I was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, who was like looking for a little bit of inspiration, looking for a little bit of guidance. I'm also posting because my family needs it. All these people who've put their careers in my hands and are trusting me, they need the work and the opportunities. So I need to just get over my own ego and set it aside and say, this is bigger than me. This is bigger than my ego and how I want to appear and how I want to look. This is about providing work and opportunities and building a future for our company and everybody in it. And then also hopefully giving some value to the community that we have built as well.
That's cool. So your advice is perspective. Like, put it into perspective, understand that this isn't, like you said, for the person 10 years ahead, or it's like, because it's for, it's I asked the question, and I'm so passionate about it, I'm getting excited about all this stuff, because this is stuff that's like so hard about being a business owner, and then posting every day and just posting more content and then trying to be a professional, right? And an expert, which you are, but at the same time, there's the imposter syndrome of like, am I? And I've struggled with it even with this podcast.
Friend to friend, I want you to post more, because you're not an imposter. Like, as somebody who looks up to you and enjoys the things that you're doing, and it's somebody who's like a peer, I'm like, man, I want to see more from Tyson. What's he doing? How's he building this? Like, you know, I'm seeing some of this on your podcast and stuff, but I'd love more tours. I'd love more walkthroughs for how you do it. Like, the crew you have here, the production value of this, that's so cool. Peel back the curtain a little bit.
And I need to, and my biggest, and we'll kind of talk about me for a sec, but my biggest thing was Lumio, first of all, dude, dealing with that, and I'm done with it now. Like, I can finally speak openly. But I had to hide. I had to play that game because when I joined Lumio, I had this opportunity like you at Route, tons of equity, a huge salary, but I said, I don't want to do it because I have my baby, which is my business. Only way I'm doing this is if I can run my business too. And that, like, 3 years was more than just, it was like the first 8 to 12 months that was the hardest time of my life navigating that.
Doing both. I don't know how you did it, man.
It was insane. And playing that game, and it changed me, man. 3 years of playing that game, it was like playing Survivor. You're making the right relationships, you're saying the right things, but then you're also trying to keep this alive. So I had to be secret about what I was up to.
Makes sense.
And just as of August, when they went bankrupt, it was like the most freeing moment of my life, when all of a sudden I didn't have to play that game anymore, and I could just truly start to show who myself is. So as you've seen recently, there's been more stuff where I'm taking a step back, working on the business and building this brand stuff, but it's cool to hear that you want to see it. And it's actually really cool for me to see you come in here and just be like, whoa, this is so cool.
Oh yeah, man. Right. Yeah. And I think we are desensitized to our own success and our own progress that we've made, you know, because you know all the steps, all the pain, all the things that you had to endure to get here. And it's not like you just walked in one day and had this. You know, it was a slow, gradual process to building up to this. And so you're desensitized to how cool this is. But somebody else who it looks like from the outside, oh man, Tyson got this overnight. Look at the success. Holy cow. Obviously, I don't have all the perspective. I know a little bit about how difficult it was, but this is exciting and this is cool. And so things that seem mundane, that seem normal, that seem uninteresting to us really is interesting to other people. One of our lab takes episode, there was a little 2-3 minute sequence where me and my brother were trying to figure out how to get a stronger Wi-Fi connection in our podcast studio. And so we're like gaff taping these little Google Wi-Fi amplifiers down the hall, trying to figure it out. And it was dumb, but there were so many people who were like, man, that was so relatable. That's so funny. And that's so cool. And that like resonated for some reason. And so things that you think are insignificant really can be very much so.
How do you navigate the okay, showing things off, being humble, because I'm a very, I like to consider myself humble.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't like to show off.
Yeah.
And you're telling me, hey, I want to see more of it. How do you navigate like showing off what you're doing at Film Lab? Because what you are doing is so cool, and you have a team, you have an amazing space, you're doing amazing things. How do you navigate showing off versus educating and just trying to build your business? Because that's what you need to do. I'm curious. This is just a totally off the cuff question.
No, I mean, it's not perfect. And I'm sure there's people who look at me on the internet and be like, oh man, this guy thinks he's all that, blah, 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 you know, and that's not the intention in any way.
I don't think that comes across. Suits you nice.
I appreciate that. But I think for me, it's the we versus I.
Yeah.
And so I really try to highlight our team. I really try to let them help tell parts of the story. Even if I'm the main narrator, I like to shout them out as being amazingly creative, or Mike worked really hard on this psych wall, or Talmadge built this podcast studio, or whatever it is. And once you give context to the story, nobody's going to think you're bragging, because if people knew the years of pain and sacrifice that you had to put in to obtain this, it's not going to seem like bragging. They're like, wow, that's part of his story, and he had to put in the work to do that. And frankly, I wouldn't want to go through that and put in all that effort. And so, again, I think making it about the collective us, Film Lab, and then also giving a little bit of insight into what it took versus, look at me, I have this cool place, I'm all that. I think that makes a big difference.
This is kind of turning into a therapy session for me.
Hey, I mean, I'm going to be needing that too, man. I mean, we should be going to lunch more just to talk about hard times and clients.
Especially just to relate and just like to be able to let off some of the struggles of business, because it isn't all pie in the sky as much as we like to show that online. But that's what I love about this podcast, is it makes everyone sitting across the table from me relatable. And then it's like, man, I'm rooting for you. It's like you start to like understand that they're struggling, even though we kind of innately know everyone's struggling. You actually see the details, and it makes it really fun.
Like, I'm Tyson's #1 fan right now, dude.
Well, I'm Mitch Thayne and Film Lab's #1 fan. This is so cool. So let's step out of the philosophy stuff for a second and get back to Film Lab. It's kind of where we started, which is where you're at now, but you just partnered up. Let's just go back to when you partnered up with Mike. Is that his name? Making that decision, getting back into a partnership, and then hiring a team. Just give us an inside look of like getting to that point of Film Lab with Mike and hiring people.
Perfect. Can I just time out really quick? I have a meeting at 10:30. I'm just going to tell Mike to handle it really quick.
Gosh, dude, I do this everything. I need to put like a...
Dude, you're good. You're good. I like glanced at my thing and I'm like, dude, I'm going to be like...
Stop.
No, you're good.
Oh my gosh. Oh yeah, because my wife's dropping off my daughter at 11, so... I'm so sorry, dude.
Dude, don't even worry about it.
I told you 10:30, huh?
No, you're totally fine.
Well, bringing it back, we're getting close. We're wrapping it up. I want to just touch on Film Lab for a little second, a little bit more, and Mike and the business. And then I want to do a couple of just a little bit of advice at the end.
Yeah, awesome. So bringing on Mike as a business partner was a game changer, because he has had experience in owning companies. He owned 7 Paul Mitchell schools. And he was running the finance, the operations. He helped scale it. He had, 180 people underneath him. He worked at Costco. So he's worked in larger organizations and knows what it takes organizationally to scale. I've never experienced that. I've always been a owner and a manager of small, nimble teams. And so Mike coming on and saying, let me take the finance off, which he'd already been doing. Let me handle the operations side of this. And also let me help a little bit with some of the project management stuff and just in general, because you need to focus on the art form and the creation and also the branding and publicizing what we're doing. And that was really huge. And Mike came in. I was able to give him some equity that he totally earned. And it has been such a joy. And it doesn't mean there wasn't hard times, right? He had to learn the industry, had to learn the business. What does deliverables mean? What do each of these different deliverables mean, and what do they entail? Okay, when you say social clip, what does that actually mean? What's the time and the effort we have to put into a studio shoot? all these different things. So there was a learning curve for him for sure. And there were natural, best practices with agency work and all that stuff that he had to develop and learn. And so there's many times where there was friction where he was selling something that I wasn't ready to do, all that stuff. But the thing about Mike and the thing about him being such a great partner is it was never personal for either of us. It was all about making Film Lab better and taking it further and making the art better. And that meant the contention or the friction that we would have at times was really just towards the common goal of how do we make this better.
Yeah.
And as we had those times of back and forth and talking and having differing opinions, we slowly over time were able to really align on visions, find our strengths, find areas where I'm like, Mike, I trust you 100%. That's all you. And same with him. And I think if we hadn't been such great communicators and we hadn't been willing to talk about our disagreements or differences, then we'd still kind of have this kind of shyly, maybe sharing an opinion here or there. But we're at the point where we are so aligned and we are so on the same page, and we worked through the process of getting to know each other's strengths and getting to understand the business that we want to build together, that now he is my favorite person in the world to talk to and one of my greatest collaborators, because again, his strengths are what I am weakest at. And he takes those things off my plate so I can focus on the things that I'm better at. And that's been just a beautiful relationship and experience. So obviously with some of that coming off my plate, I was able to focus more time on our team, on the creation of our work and the things that we were making, and slowly being able to build that. And luckily I've been able to work with, again, 2 of my brothers. My sister now works with us, some of my best friends. Some of the most talented creatives I know have been able to come in. And I think a lot of that is due to the structure that Mike was able to bring, the stability there, and then also us just being able to make better and better work.
Dude, that's so cool. I have like a million questions in all of that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to ask them all. We can get into it another time. But that's something that I'm trying to transition into right now, which is the partnership part. Not that I'm bringing on a partner to Tyson Media, but I'm starting something new that we can talk about. But you don't realize what you don't know until someone, or how do I phrase this? Someone comes in like Mike into your business and starts to point out things from a whole different perspective, especially when it comes to business. Because as much as I like to think I'm good at business and I kind of have a knack for it and I enjoy it, there's so much stuff, dude, I don't know anything about, and I'm learning through fire. And I'm heading this new direction with a partner, and I'm just like, what the freak? I can understand, especially if you can find the right person, I can understand why that's so important, because we're navigating and onboarding right now with a client, and he's bringing in all these new perspectives and processes that I'm just like, whoa, why haven't I been doing this? But at the same time, I didn't know. And so I can understand, and that's,
and
he
like, probably couldn't do the work that you
exactly.
he needed
and
to
we
do.
remind each other of that. And I'm sure Mike does the same with you. He's like, I wouldn't have ever thought of that. But it's like there's something so beautiful in that, and it's kind of cool that you had this partnership with someone that was so much like you, and now you've got this partnership with someone that's so much different. And that's always been my thing, is like, how do I choose the right person? And it's ultimately someone that's got so many different skills, but aligned on values.
Yeah.
Sounds like you found that. And that's so crucial and so cool that you have found that. So anyone listening that wants to do a partnership, take that, because it can also be sour too.
Yeah.
If you don't have the right things in place. So, well, that is, let's just wrap up the journey there. I want to just have you, I want to do some spitfire, just like topics real quick.
Sure.
But before we get into that, parting advice to the young kid that's 10 years behind us, or even just wanting to pick up a camera and go down the same route. Maybe they have an entrepreneur spirit, some ambition. What would you tell that person if they wanted to be in your shoes?
Tenacity will beat talent every time. I have outlasted many people who are much more talented than me because I've stuck with it. And I'm only in the position where I'm at now because I picked up a camera, a decade ago, and I stuck with it. And I have a dogged, hardworking personality. And there are many times it probably would have been smarter to quit, but I didn't, and I stuck with it. And so if you can be the person who can persevere and endure during the trials, the hard times, and continue to work, ultimately the competition will continue to fall away because they root themselves out. They get tired, they get burnt out, and they quit and they leave. And then the person who remains is the person who's going to win. And that's what I've been able to find is, again, I'm not the most talented, but I'm tenacious and I'm going to stick with it. And so if you can do the same thing with whatever you do, if you want to be successful in a relationship, you be tenacious and you stick with it. If you want to be successful in business, the same thing. If you want to become an incredible creative, you stick with it. You put in the reps and you outlast everybody else and you'll win.
That's amazing. I think that's a perfect way to wrap this thing up. Tenacity is something I've actually never even considered as like as a trait that you need. It's like the grit, right?
Yeah.
So, well, thank you for that advice. I think that's incredible.
Thank you.
Let's wrap this podcast up. Off podcast, I'm going to ask you these questions more for social media things because I want to talk to you about just little advice things.
For sure.
But thank you for being on this. It's been so much fun to catch up with you. I could do this for another 4 hours.
I know. I think I'm like, dude, we gotta come back, recording or not.
I know. I'd love to have guests on again too, and actually just get the journey out of the way, but just talk strictly about what's going on. So that'd be so fun. So thanks for joining us. That's the end of this episode. Like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. If you want to follow Mitch, make sure you go to his Instagram. It's Mitch Thayne. Mitchell Thayne. And then your company's Instagram is?
Film Lab, 2 A's on Lab.
Cool. And if you're watching this and you're a person that needs video, and they have the best style. That's what I love about your guys' company is like the style. When you see it, it's like, well, that's Mitch's.
Well, yeah, if Tyson's too busy, give us a call.
I know, right? It's like, well, how about we both work on it?
We talked about that with Lumen. Why don't we do that?
I was like trying to bring you, and I'm like, how do we collaborate?
That'd
Which is
be
ultimately what you're trying to do. Is just like, how do we get people together that are creative and like-minded and just create cool things? So, all right, well, that's the end of this.